Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ryan. I'm Accountant and Product Manager for My Strategic Plan. We're excited to have your participation in today's Strategy Huddle. Today's topic is about sales strategy and how it fits into your strategic plan. We have a visiting strategy leader joining us today, and I'll introduce the presenters here in just a minute. The purpose of this call, as always, is to talk strategy, to talk execution, and really to address some real-world questions and provide some ideas and actionable solutions. So quick ground rules. The presentation is targeted for about 45 to 60 minutes. We absolutely encourage your participation. If you identify yourself with a topic or a question, please use the chat box there on the right-hand side, and we will read that off. We'll also be emailing a copy of the presentation with a link to today's recording, so you'll have that as a resource. And as always, just remember, this is not a rehearsed presentation. We take these questions on the fly. This topic actually is kind of a special one. We've gotten a lot of customers over the last few months that wanted to talk about this. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Our team, as always, is dedicated to inspiring big ideas and creating the laser-like focus to achieve them. It's really about being strategic and making a difference. And we want to be impactful to our customers and our community and help our customers do the same. On that note, we've had numerous requests for today's topic, and we hope the dedicated time today adds to your thought process and provides some actionable direction. I'm excited to introduce today's Strategy Huddle leaders, and that is Eric Olson and Alice Heiman. Eric is one of the Strategy Huddle leading presenters that constantly joins us. She's our COO and co-founder of M3 Planning, which is the parent company of My Strategic Plan and really the brains behind the intellectual property of that system. Eric is also the co-author of Strategic Planning for Dummies and has several spot training videos on strategic planning, both on our site as well as YouTube, so you can check them out there. And I'm also excited to introduce our visiting strategy leader, and that is Alice Heiman, founder and president of Alice Heiman, Inc. Alice is a sales strategist, author, speaker, and trainer, and she has many other books listed on her site and videos that you can view there as well. From Fortune 500 to entrepreneurs, some of her wonderful clients include Coca-Cola, HP, GE Security, Merck, University of Nevada, Reno, Dixon Realty, and on and on. Alice has graciously volunteered to be a visiting strategy leader today, and we're excited to have her. With that said, I'll turn the call over to Erica, and we'll get the huddle started.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning, Alice.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pleasure to be here.
Good morning to everyone, and we are both super excited to be presenting and chatting with everyone and huddling up, as we like to call it, around sales strategy. As Ryan indicated, today's topic is a little bit different insofar as, or today's approach, I should say, is a little bit different insofar as Alice and I have structured the 55 minutes we have together with you all in a conversational style, a conversational mode. So while we have some pretty specific questions we'd like to address and have Alice share her wisdom and expertise on, we don't necessarily have everything covered that might be on your mind. So just to reinforce what Ryan said, that please use the chat box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. We will take questions in the moment, specifically related to the topic that Alice is addressing. If you have something else that comes up for you, we will leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to take your questions. So please feel free to add to the conversation. We're really looking forward to it. You can see the agenda. It's pretty loose. We always do our strategy stat of the month, and then we're going to jump into the key topic is sales ability and really a focus around sales strategy and how it fits into your strategic plan. So the topic today is not necessarily going to, it's not really addressed at those of us that are buffed out on our sales strategy. It's more focused on the corporate perspective as well as those of us that may not have a clear understanding of how sales strategy works and how we build a sales strategy that is aligned with our corporate strategic direction. So that's really kind of the tenor that the conversation will go in. And, of course, as we mentioned before, we'll take your questions either in the moment or at the end. So our strategy stat of the month, we love these, of course. This was something, actually, that Ryan saw yesterday in one of the numerous sources he was looking at. And something to kind of just share with you is certainly this, you can see the sources from Booz and Company, and the title of the study, or at least the findings from the study, was really about the fact that the majority of the respondents were feeling less than confident or a slip in confidence in their confidence in their company's strategy. And you can see the 3 points there, but really what's probably not called out here strongly is the fact that these numbers were less agreement than the previous time that they did the study. So kind of something to think about, maybe also something to feed into your organization. How confident are the employees and stakeholders in your organization around your corporate strategic direction, and do you think that your company's strategy actually is the right one and is the one that it's going to take to win? So I thought that was sort of interesting. Might just also be a reflection of the feeling of the mood of the country right now and our confidence in our future a little bit. So you can kind of see what other folks are thinking. All right. So with that kind of backdrop, let's jump into the heart of the topic. So one of the first questions we wanted to jump in with Alice about is kind of just talk a little bit, and this is kind of keying off what I just mentioned. Why are some companies' sales declining and other companies' sales continuing to increase? And I know from the clients that we're working with, we work with some companies that are just on this ridiculous growth curve, and others that are just trying to find their footing. So, Alice, why those two sort of almost polar things occurring right now?
It's a pretty crazy time right now, and of course we could blame a lot on the economy, but I really like to take a more strategic look at it. Some of the companies are certainly doing really well. They have sales that are increasing. They are hiring. Companies, that are buying their products and services are doing well, and then we see people closing their doors and laying off masses of people. So the economic conditions certainly play a role in this, and I don't want to downplay that at all, but why are some companies doing better? I mean, we have to take a critical look at that. And I think what I see in the companies whose sales are declining is that they play into the economic conditions. And you hear them saying all the time that the economy is hurting their business. The salespeople have bought into that and they believe that. They also seem to have a lack of flexibility, and they're not actually really making the changes that they need. And I see poor planning going on as well, and I'm sure you see that with the strategic plans you're working on. These companies do not have a solid plan. Whereas on the flip side of that, companies who are increasing sales are flexible. In some cases, they have changed completely the way that they do things or what they're doing so that their company can succeed in the market. They're listening to their customers and hearing what their customers need. They're adjusting their prices if needed, or they're adjusting their business model. They're innovative, and that innovation has carried so many of these companies. It's just amazing. But last and probably most importantly, their strategy is really clear. They're very strategic, and they have a solid plan, and they're working their plan. And within that is what's allowing them to be flexible and innovative.
So, Alice, maybe can you give us an example that one of your clients that has done something kind of radically different that has helped them, kind of like you were just indicating right now, that flexibility and really shifting maybe their go-to-market strategy or how they're approaching their customers? What have you seen?
Well, for example, in the training industry, which I'm very involved in, I see a lot of people going to virtual training versus live training. It saves a lot of money on travel, hotel costs, food costs, all of those things. And if you're innovative, you can put on a great online training that will serve the same purpose. So I think that that's one of the big changes that I've seen. Not that people aren't still doing live training, but the companies who have really stayed forefront in the market have been figuring out ways to give the training needed without having to soak up so much cash for travel and hotels and things like that. Some of the other companies, I work with a small specialty bakery, and they have succeeded for 30 years doing one thing, and they did it really, really well. But in the past 3 years, they've had to completely change their model and take a look at what are their customers asking for and what can they do. So now, instead of being a baker of one type of specialty good, they are now making 4 or 5 different types, and they've changed the way they deliver those as well.
Interesting. And in both of those instances, totally market-driven choices, it sounds like.
Absolutely, but strong strategy behind it. So you can't just stake out and go, oh, I think we'll make a different kind of cookie today and hope everybody wants to eat it. because it just doesn't work. You've got to think about it. You've got to do a little market research. Yeah, it costs some money, but you know what? There's a bazillion ways today with the internet to do market research. Just using your Facebook page, you could put out to people and ask them, what are you looking for? What do you want? You could do an email survey using something inexpensive or free like SurveyMonkey or many of the other tools like that. So you can get a lot of consumer information these days with very little cost involved. And then for business-to-business sale, it's simple. Pick up your own customers, and pick up the phone, and call your own customers and ask them what do they need, what do they want, and make adjustments based on that. So really, without spending a lot of money on focus groups or consumer research, you can get what you need.
Do you think that sometimes we just overlook the obvious, like you just mentioned, like picking up the phone and talking to our customers?
Absolutely. And part of anybody's strategy, I firmly believe, needs to be periodic check-ins with their customers. Because if you have a sales process in place and your salespeople are out doing something, but you don't bother to check in with the customer to see if they're satisfied, to see if they've got everything they need, eventually it's going to fall apart because your customers will tell you what they want to buy. They'll tell you what they wish your products or services did for them that they're not doing right now. But you have to ask them. They don't just volunteer the information.
And I know some of this stuff is super common sense, but I know conversations with Alice and certainly conversations with some of our clients as well, and probably you're thinking about this internally. When's the last time that we picked up the phone and asked those hard questions of ourselves and of our customers, as opposed to maybe the transactional, basic satisfaction type stuff. And then I always find the kicker is, so we get that information and taking action and executing against it and building it into our strategic plan is always that thing that we kind of tend to fall a little short on because it's hard and it takes us it takes sort of continuity in order to do that.
Right.
One more thought before we go to our next question I wanted to ask you, Alice, was the newsletter that we sent out this month, last week, and many of you probably read it, was Alice's article on the power of why. And so there's a little bit of that belief piece too there. So talk to us a little bit in the context of people's sales increasing and the belief of how that comes to play.
Well, absolutely, the power of why is like a magnet. So, just think about when your company first started, the founders of whatever company you work for, maybe you are the founders. Think about why you started your business. It probably wasn't just because you didn't want to work wherever you were working anymore. It's probably because you thought you could do a better job. It's probably because there was something that you loved and had passion around that you wanted to bring to a broader audience. And so you had this real drive, this real passion around this thing that you wanted to deliver to everyone. And that was your why. It's the why that got you up and made you work really hard when your company couldn't pay you any money. It's the why you were able to do what you were able to do, that entrepreneurial enthusiasm. And think about huge companies like Hewlett-Packard. When Hewlett and Packard were in their garage together building this dream that they had a passion and people followed them and they loved them. And then what happened is, all of a sudden, after years, people got real busy doing the how and the what, and the why dropped off. And now if you walk around some of these huge corporations and ask people why this company exists, you'll get a myriad of different reasons, and none of them will probably be what the founders intended. So in the book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek, which I highly recommend all of you read. It is an absolutely fantastic book, very easy to read. What they talk about is how Apple, has really kept their why, and how people will line up for 4 or 5 hours to get a new iPad or a new iPhone because they believe in that why. And to succeed in this economy, I'm gonna really implore you to get back to your why and share it with your employees and share it with your customers so they understand why they're buying from you a product they might be able to buy from somebody else. It's because of the why that you have. So I think that's really critical. One other note I want to make, because we're going to move on to the next topic, but in terms of planning, with the why, with asking the customers, with all of these things we just talked about, I want everybody to keep in mind that a great time to survey their customers is just before they do their annual strategic planning. Everybody should be updating their plan, right, every year, right, Eric?
Absolutely, that's right.
Plan. And right before you do it would be a great time to get some information from the people who buy from you so that you can incorporate that into your plan, because you never know. It might drive you to invent a new product. It might drive you to change the way you deliver your services. It might also help you applaud your employees for doing what they do really well and keep doing it. So, please keep in mind that asking your customers is a great thing to do just right before you do your strategic planning, so you have that information to go forward with.
Absolutely. And after my own heart, we talk about that all the time, about making sure that we're being externally focused when we're looking at creating, market growth strategies, and not, as my current term is this week, not navel gazing, not just looking internally and searching within ourselves. So we just had a request to say the name of the book again. So it's The Power of Why, right, Alice?
Start with Why.
Okay.
And it's by Simon Sinek. And he also has a great website, startwithwhy.com, and some videos on YouTube that are good to watch.
And he did a TED Talk.
And he did do a TED Talk, that's right.
Yeah, it was very popular, so check out the TED Talk.
Yeah.
And I'm not exactly sure how to spell his last name.
It's Sinek.
Okay, perfect. Since we kind of just teed this up, let's talk about sort of the idea of how we use our strategic plan to build our sales strategy. So, Alice, take us away on that and talk to us about so we've got a plan. Now what?
All right. Well, so you're trying to build a sales strategy in your company. Maybe you're trying to build a sales culture. The big problem comes when you don't have this as part of your strategic plan. And so, Erica, I know that you and I have worked with some of our, mutual clients together on this, but it's really important. You cannot build your sales strategy in a vacuum. It absolutely has to be part of your strategic plan. And if you don't have a strategic plan, then you really need to go back and spend the time to build your plan. Using the software that M3 Planning provides, the mystrategicplan.com, mynonprofit.com, and all of those softwares make it so easy for you. And by the way, I don't get paid by this company to promote their products, but I have to tell you that all of my clients use them because they are easy to use, and it makes it possible for people who never thought they would have a strategic plan to actually have one. So whatever process you use, build a strategic plan and start there, because all of your sales goals will fall out of that. And once you have your sales goals, then you can build your sales strategy around that. And so just keep in mind, what is it you want your company to do? And it starts with your why. Go back to your why. So we want our company to make $10 million in sales. Well, that's fantastic. Why? Okay, just so you can pay all your bills? Not a good enough reason. You've got to have something stronger and more powerful than that everybody at your company can believe in and get on board with, and that your salespeople can carry through to the customers. So set your sales goals, and then start to reflect on your current business. Those are some really key and important things. Because some people think, okay, well, gosh, we can go to from 5 million to 10 million in 1 year. And you might be able to do it. I don't know. But you have to reflect on what reality is as well as what you would like it to be. Another good thing to do is, as you're setting your sales strategy, think about your retention rate. At what rate are you retaining business? Many clients that I'm working with now are losing their customers as fast as they're gaining them. You're just not going to be able to make a huge impact when that's the case. So I want everybody to think about what the retention rate is, and as part of your strategy, you need to shore that up. It should be nothing less than 80%, and I would certainly like it to be higher than that. But if you don't have a retention rate of 80%, you need to figure out in your strategy how to get it, and I would focus on that before I would even focus on running out to get new sales. However, with that caveat, I don't know all of your businesses, so I'd have to take a deeper look at it. So once you've done those things, gather the resources that you need, like the information you might have gotten from your own customers. I always like to survey people internally. I know you're a big advocate of that with your strategic planning, and that works for your sales force too. Those salespeople are out there. They know what people need. They know what needs to change. They can help you with a strategic plan and make sure they're part of it. Then you're going to set your sales strategy, and of course, as you always recommend, Erica, you're going to revisit it throughout the year. There's nothing worse than setting sales goals and seeing after first quarters that they're impossible to meet and not adjusting them.
So you recommend adjusting them?
Absolutely. I just had that with a client recently. They had set some sales goals that seemed reasonable at the time, and I helped them set those goals. But once first quarter was over and we realized that some of their clients were actually shrinking instead of growing, we had to readjust, and then we had to look for another new market segment to go after to make up for that.
So, Alice, we just had a really interesting and tough question come in, so let's see where we go with this. Brian, thanks for asking the question. So the comment was, great information. However, the book Innovator's Dilemma makes the point that several companies have lost their lead despite doing all of the right things which you speak of. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I haven't read that book yet, and I also don't know which companies they are and why they lost their lead. And I don't know what all the right things are either. But so it's tough to comment. But I don't know. There may have been something that was overlooked, or they may have needed to change completely what they were doing. And so maybe they were doing all the right things, like, for example, in the auto industry, we can speak to that. I mean, what can you do about that? You're making making really good cars, and still, right, the market's falling out, or in construction, right? So, but the construction companies that I know that have succeeded changed. They were flexible. They decided to do something completely different. I mean, there's an example of one company that I met the owner of, and instead of building things anymore, he changed his company into a fix-it company. So he's not even in that same exact playing field anymore, and he's still making money.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, sort of to that point, one of our clients is in the construction industry as well, went through that massive, crisis that we all went through, especially on the West Coast related to construction and build out and sort of the market falling out of that sector. And what they did to not lose their lead is they have a pretty sophisticated, as some of us probably do, some of us don't, but it's a fairly sophisticated set of economic indicators that they know statistically predict their business, and they kind of have it based on a certain time frame. In this case, it happens to be like 14 months. So they have that kind of modeling, which is pretty cool. So a takeaway from that for all of us is, what are some of those economic indicators that might be predictive for your business that you should maybe monitor a little bit, that can be kind of the warning buoys that are out there. At any rate, they knew that warning buoy kind of went off, and they completely shifted their focus from a dying industry to a really booming industry in geothermal.
There you go.
Right? So market shift, and again, that came really from talking to their top customers. Their sales guy, their regional directors, actually really drove that change because they saw the demand coming from a couple of those geothermal companies, right, and their entire strategy shifted, and now I think it's making up about 80% of their revenue. Right. Huge example of sticking with your core competencies, which I think is really important, but driving your market choices or your sales strategy based on what your customers are telling you and where the market's going, and being willing to make that change, which is also
absolutely. And there is a normal life cycle. I mean, some businesses, it's like the horse and buggy, right? Yeah. I mean, just going back. There's not too many buggy makers anymore because we don't need buggies too much anymore. But then cars replace that. Now what's next? So the innovators of the buggies turned into automakers. So sometimes, there's a natural life cycle, and that business is not there anymore. And maybe you're even going to have to just close the doors and shut it down, but you're going to start something new. So yeah, absolutely, that can happen sometimes.
Let's talk about the next topic that we have here, and the question is, what are the key factors to consider in creating an effective sales strategy? So part of the reason that we're asking this question is because a lot of, to Alex's point earlier, a lot of the clients that we work with and a lot of questions that have come in over the past year are really about, so what does a sales strategy really look like? How does it affect? What do I do? What are the components of it? So, Alice, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, again, once you have your strategic plan set up, and I just can't hammer on that enough, I'm sorry. It's so hard for me to go in and help a company increase sales that doesn't have a strategic plan. I mean, I can make some small changes that will absolutely make an impact, but in the big picture, nothing really can be done until that strategic plan is set.
So Alice, wait, why?
Why? Well, I think that I know that sales affects every other piece of the business. And so if I go ahead and increase your sales without really understanding what's going on in manufacturing or in delivery or the other pieces of your business, I could actually implode your company. And I have several examples of how that's happened in the past, where the salespeople have outsold what the company could produce, and you have a lot of angry customers, and it takes years to overcome that kind of a failure. You just can't say let's increase sales and not look at everything else. So if the company wants to have a certain amount of growth, they have to make sure each department can move along with the growth so that whatever sales is doing is not going to be too little and it's not going to be too much. You know, we've got to have capacity. Well, how do we know if there's capacity if we don't have a plan? Also, if new products are coming into play and we're going to have to train our salespeople to sell those new products, we have to pay attention to the ramp cycles for training people and getting a new product to market. And so sometimes we have these really ambitious sales goals with a brand new product that, you know, are just going to wipe the salespeople out. So it's got to be balance in the organization. There's got to be organized growth. Yes, some of it can be organic, absolutely, and so many companies grow that way, but you do get to a point where the organic growth isn't going to get you where you want to be, and it's going to drive everyone nuts. So set a solid plan in place. It doesn't have to be written in stone, right? That's why the software allows you to go in and change anything anytime you want, but you've got to start with a plan and then fit the proper pieces in, the innovation pieces, the sales pieces, the manufacturing pieces, and all, you know, the other accounting pieces, all the things that make a company work, the people pieces, all of that, because sometimes we won't have enough staff to do what we want to do. So the key factors really, once you have your sales goals that fell out of your strategic plan, is to consider your target market. And I think that a lot of companies just shoot too broad. Who is your target market? Describe them to the point that you can name them instantly. You can recognize them instantly. You know, my target market is a company that blah, 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 has all these factors. So I can find those companies really easily, and my salespeople don't waste time selling to companies that don't fit, because that makes the sale harder, it makes the sales cycle longer, and it makes for less happy customers once they buy.
And Alice, on that point, and again, I know some of this stuff is just, you know, common sense, right? We say, of course, yes, of course, we know our target customers, but I find, and you probably do too, is that we are scared to focus on one or two, or maybe it's 10, but that's a lot, of target customers. So what is your coaching around that, or maybe some success stories that you've seen?
Yeah, focus is absolutely tough because you think, oh my gosh, you know, if I just focus my business on women, or if I just focus on companies over 100 million, or if I just focus on green companies, then I'm missing this whole other part of the market. Oh no. You know, again, with each of your plans, you have to really consider all of these factors. There's not just, I can't just tell you, you know, in this simple phone call how to choose, but truly, if you look at your current customer base, and if you listed all of your current customers and the qualities that they have and the demographics that they have, and then you start to pick, like if you rated those, rank them, you know, at A, B, or C. These are the A customers. They fit perfectly. They're so easy to work with. They buy lots. All the things we love about them. Wouldn't you want to go get more of those? So once you know what those look like, now you can go find more of them. It doesn't mean that you won't necessarily take business from other types of customers, but you won't spend your resources out focused on marketing to them, because if you're marketing to the wrong audience, it's going to bring you more of the business you don't want. So when you target, you figure out who you want to target to, and you spend your energy and resources on that market, and the periphery will still come in to some degree, and you can decide whether you want to take in that kind of business or not.
Some other stuff related to the sales strategy pieces are lead gen and qualification. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, people can make their sales person's job really, really hard if they want to. And it amazes me how many companies do that. When I walk in the door, I'm like, wow, you are making your salespeople work really hard, you know? If you are generating leads properly, if you're generating leads to get the type of audience you want, your salespeople can spend their valuable time on qualifying, educating, and then closing the business. But so many companies expect their salespeople to generate their own leads. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because certainly salespeople should help in that process, but your sales process is lengthened greatly when your salespeople have to start from ground zero and generate their own leads. So you can shorten your sales cycle by generating good leads.
And your suggestion on that, and I think this is probably one of those contested things in business, but the primary accountability for lead generation falls on the marketing teams.
Why, yes, it does, Erica. Yeah, this is the age-old controversy between sales and marketing. Salespeople have to be involved in generating leads. Marketing has to be involved in generating leads. In fact, every single person who works at a company should be involved in generating leads. If you know why your company exists, and then what they do and how they do it, and you can speak that clearly, and every person who works at a company should be able to do that, in that case then, everybody can be a lead generator for you, because they're out in the community, they're out in the business world, they're out with their family and friends, and people who could possibly buy from you. And so that helps you with lead generation. And then, of course, your marketing team is very skilled at lead generation, using things like PR, social media, advertising, marketing, traditional and new, all of that blended together can generate great leads for the salespeople. Also, if you do it right, and if you're targeting your audience, you will end up with much more highly qualified leads coming in, and that will shorten your sales cycle. I mean, people are always calling me, asking me about how to get their salespeople to close deals. Well, closing the deal starts with a qualified lead. I mean, I can't close the deal at the end. It's already too late if it's not closing. I need to start with a qualified lead. Qualified leads shorten the sales cycle, and companies just don't do enough on that end, Erica, to get those leads qualified. So there's lots of different ways to go about it, but it is an absolute key to success in a sales strategy.
Alice, we have a question here that's specifically related to target markets, and we're going to bring it forward right now as we're scrolling through. We've got a lot of questions. We will do our best to get to everyone. Give us just a minute. There we go. So the question from one of our participants is, we've recently struggled with a target focus because we're a community bank and have to offer services from cradle to grave. Any thoughts?
I work with a lot of financial institutions. It's one of the markets I really enjoy a lot. So this is what I can say. Yes, absolutely, you have to offer, right? Because that's what a community bank does. But you still, again, can pick what I call a sweet spot and spend more of your time, effort, and energy focused on that. And again, the other business will still come. You're not going to turn it away, but you may have a different way to handle it, and you may have a different group that handles these customers who are in your sweet spot. Because let's face it, if you don't get some ideal business in the door, you won't be there to handle all the other customers who need you too. So for the growth and health of your business, you have to focus on the business that's the most profitable, the business that's easier to do, the business that's best for your company, because that's going to be the core, and that's what's going to be profitable. And then it gives you the ability to handle some of the other things as well.
Perfect. So it also depends upon the outbound, inbound component that you're speaking of as well, correct? So it can be related to the outbound sales efforts.
Absolutely.
While being broad in reach because they are a community bank.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I mean, actually, I would look at it the exact opposite in a way.
Okay.
I would focus my outbound efforts on the ideal business and let the inbound come in as it may.
Yeah.
And so if they come in, we don't turn them away. We help them, we nurture them, we take good care of them, because you never know, they may be one of those ideal customers someday. But our outbound efforts, our marketing efforts, our sales efforts go towards what the ideal business is.
Perfect. So I'll just share one really quick war story with, we were working with a company a couple months ago actually, and I think this is totally classic in entrepreneurial run companies. And that is, when, of course, the CEO is still a founder, and that doesn't mean they're small necessarily. This particular organization is a $100 million company, and the owner just really, and as most entrepreneurial owners are, they don't want to limit the playing field because they're kind of, I say they eat what they kill, so they're really opportunistic in that regard. Well, through the strategic planning process, we did limit the scope. We helped facilitate what the primary audience and the primary markets for growth would be, and then therefore the defaulting decision from that is who are we not going after, right? So we might take the business and it comes to us, but who are we not? Which markets fall out of our scope, out of our mission, out of our strategy, our growth strategy. So the sales team that was sitting there said, oh, well, that means those 20 deals that we're working on right now that really aren't going anywhere, we're not going to focus on those anymore, right? And of course, the entrepreneurial CEO said, well, I guess. So what I think is important is that we came around to the fact that, right, that's the point.
Right.
That's the point, so that they can focus on our target market deals that were in the hopper. So it's interesting to see that evolutionary process happen with an organization when we say, well, let's have a plan, let's have a sales strategy, and then let's actually stick to it.
Right. It's a shift. For real. It's a shift, and it's not easy because you're just so afraid that you might lose some business, some dollars through the door that you really need. But I want you to keep in mind that not all business is good business. And for many reasons. It doesn't mean that company or those people are bad in any way whatsoever. It's just that not all business is good business for your company. And to grow and thrive, you need to have the majority of your business be, quote unquote, good business, business that's right for you, business that fits, business that's easy to do, business that gives you, that stance in the marketplace, that people look to you as a leader. So it's really important that the business raise you up as well. The customers that are coming in also help raise you up. That's how you'll grow and thrive.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit, you touched on this a bit, about sales cycle and how sales cycle can affect not only sales strategy, but the corporate strategy as well, because it has a lot to do with timing and budgeting and goal setting and all of that. So talk to us a little bit about sales cycles.
Well, everybody wants to shorten their sales cycle. That's what I can say about sales cycles. I never had anybody come to me and say, Alice, we'd like to lengthen our sales cycle. That's just what we want to do here. We're going to lengthen our sales cycle and everything's going to be fine. No, I never hear that. So the problem is that many companies are lengthening their sales cycle really without knowing that they're even doing it. And one of the ways is that they don't generate leads for their salespeople and they don't generate qualified leads. So again, I can't say enough how much difference a qualified lead makes. If you spend your money on the front end bringing qualified leads in, yes, your sales cycle will be shorter and the job of the salesperson will be easier. So I think that's an important thing. It's good to note that the sales cycle is different at every company. I mean, I've helped companies sell everything from helicopters to cookies, as I mentioned earlier. The sales cycle for a helicopter is long. It's a multi-million-dollar purchase. They have to build the helicopter to spec. I mean, there's just so many things that make it a long, long sales cycle, and there's not too many shortcuts there. Okay? But then, on the other hand, you'd think selling cookies, that's pretty easy, right? Hey, taste this cookie. You like it? Good. You want to buy those for your company? You think that'd be short. But it's not short because huge corporations like Kroger and Safeway and, other big Costco markets across the nation, they have buying cycles that are important. They have buyers who have to run through a set of criteria and taste a lot of products. And then once they've decided on those products don't start in until 3 or 4 quarters later, because they have to set up everything and get everything in place to go. So sales cycles are different with every different company and product, and depending on who your buyer is. And one of the things I think it's important to say here, this is really more tactics than strategy, but many salespeople want to create urgency. Sales managers, business owners, they always tell me, I want to create urgency. I want these people to buy sooner, faster. I'm like, wow, I would like them to do that too, but I don't know how to do that because I can't make you buy anything any faster than you're going to. And so what I want to do is flip your idea about creating urgency into an idea about understanding how your customer buys so that you can help them buy more efficiently, and that will be faster. But you cannot make them buy because you want them to. I mean, obviously you can have a sale every once in a while, but you can't do that every week because then they're going to realize, oh my gosh, why would I ever pay full price if I could always have a sale? It's like, no offense, but Macy's. I know that if I go back in 2 weeks, it'll be on the 75% off rack. Well, granted, maybe my size won't be there, but half the time it is. So, they've kind of trained me now to wait for their sale. So don't do that to your customers either, just to shorten your sales cycle. You've got to think about the way people buy and how your customers buy and what they have to go through in order to make a purchase, and you need to understand it really clearly, because if you do, you can help them do a better job buying. But that means our salespeople have to really think about what they're doing. They can't just go out, pitch a product, and say, hey, do you want to buy it? They need to go out and learn about the company, ask a lot of questions, understand how it's going to work, and then be a part of that process. That's not a hindrance, but a help, and get that moving. So you've got to figure out what your sales cycle is. I run into a lot of companies who don't even know how long their sales cycle is, can't even tell me. They go, well, it's all over the board. Well, of course it's all over the board. Sometimes you get somebody who calls you up and just buys something, so it's one day, and sometimes it takes a year. But there is an average sales cycle that the salespeople will be able to tell you, or if you're using some kind of CRM and a sales funnel, and people are logging in, from when they get the lead till when they close the lead, you can figure out your sales cycle, and you must, or you cannot plan a solid strategy around it. So you've got to know that strategy, and you've got to account for it when you're determining the revenue goals. So just because you'd like your sales cycle to be shorter doesn't mean you can tighten up your revenue goals and say, well, you're going to hit this by this quarter. This is why I think that quotas are just so outdated. They're ridiculous. I don't even know how you can use a quota system anymore, because if you're really interested in how your customer buys and following that cycle and shortening your own sales cycle, giving a quota to salespeople that's just based on, hey, you're going to hit this number this month, it's crazy. We need some reality here, and that's why I teach my clients to use a sales funnel to predict what their sales are going to be, versus just setting arbitrary quotas, which most quotas truly are just very arbitrary. So I want you to think about, when you are setting quotas, if you do that at your company, think about the length of your sales cycle and whether it's actually really realistic or not. We do need to motivate salespeople, don't get me wrong, but I just think there's other ways to do it.
So what would you do? I mean, that's a pretty controversial thought, right, to say get rid of quotas.
It's pretty controversial because the people who set the quotas don't understand sales. It's not controversial to people who do sales. You ask a salesperson and they'll tell you. You ask a good sales manager who really understands sales. You ask a CEO who really understands sales. But people, it's just like they're afraid not to focus because they might miss some business. They're afraid to throw out something, this age-old quota thing. I don't even, it's crazy. There are many better ways to motivate your salespeople and to make sure that they hit some numbers. We do have to hit some numbers, right? That's what we have to do in business. But there are better ways to do it. And I think that if you use more of a funnel management system, and you understand your customers and ask them what they're planning on buying, you can come up with some numbers that are realistic that people can hit and exceed. But you've got to have a plan to do it. And each salesperson needs a plan, each territory needs a plan, the entire company needs a plan. So it all has to roll down. You get your strategic plan, your sales strategy, the sales managers have their strategy for their group, and each salesperson within that group has to have their own strategy for hitting that number.
Perfect. Okay, so let's take the last question that we have pre-prepped from the questions that came in over the course of the month, and then we'll move to the questions that folks have been putting in as we've been going through. So quickly, Alice, what are some considerations that need to be made regarding sales personnel to support the sales strategy? And you talked a little bit about that just now. So touch on a couple other points that you think are important around salespeople to support the sales strategy.
Well, again, once you've set a strategy for your entire company, you have to really take a look at that and see what personnel are needed company-wide. But setting a sales strategy, a lot of times we raise salespeople's quotas. We give them absolutely no help whatsoever. We don't give them any more qualified leads. We don't give them a sales assistant. We don't even give them much marketing help. But we've raised their quota, and they're supposed to go out and get some more sales. Most salespeople leave companies not because they're not making a lot of money. They leave companies because they feel underappreciated and abused. And good salespeople, will always be employed because someone will snatch them up in a heartbeat. So I think we really need to take a look at what we're doing. And I know, oh my gosh, the complaining that goes on in companies about the salespeople. All they ever do is take people out to dinner and golf and blah, 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 blah. They're thinking, oh, you want to support those salespeople more. Well, the rest of the company needs to start to understand what salespeople do, because they really don't. And it's really good to do some cross-training and have people tag along with salespeople and have salespeople help the rest of the company understand. I might be out playing golf, but I also worked 80 hours this week because I worked a trade show on Saturday and Sunday all day. You were home with your family. And then I flew on Monday all day and still had to come to the office when I got back, answer all my emails, phone mails, whatever. I worked till 8 o'clock that night, and then the next morning I got up and did it again. And then after I worked a full 7, 8, 9-hour day, I took my clients out to dinner for 3 hours. Oh yeah, going out to dinner is fun, but I haven't seen my kids now since the week before because I've been at a trade show and I've been flying, and now I'm out to dinner with my clients. So, hold on just a minute, right? People, I think, you really don't have a good understanding of what a salesperson does or how hard they work, or, really what the hours they put in are, and not to discount anything that anyone else does at a company, because everyone's role is important. But I think that sometimes we really just don't understand. And then we raise the quotas and we ask our salespeople to do more. We never say thank you. We just say, well, they get a bonus or they get their commission, so isn't that thank you enough? I cannot tell you how many sales managers I hear say those words. So what I want you to think about when you are setting your strategy is, how many salespeople do you really need to hit that? Are you overtaxing your salespeople? Should there be one more salesperson? Should there be one more territory? Should it be sliced up differently? Should they be teamed up differently? Should they have sales assistants, right? You've got to think really about the staffing for your sales if you really want to hit those numbers. You also need to think about hiring and training salespeople. People are constantly telling me how disappointed they are with the salespeople they hired. And I'm like, well, what have you done here? Well, you hired the wrong type of salesperson. You didn't give them enough training. You don't give them any ongoing training. You're killing me here, okay? So salespeople, you need to hire the right ones. You need to train them. You need to figure out the cost of getting the good candidates in your budget for your strategy. If you need new salespeople, don't try to do that yourself. It's like, don't do this at home. This is what professionals do. They hire good salespeople for you. Get a professional and really plan in the time and the money needed for the training that's, when you hire and train a salesperson.
Great. Alice has just given us all kinds of great stuff. I know I don't know about you, my head's spinning a little bit thinking about, wow, we should do that. Yep, we should do that too. That's great. And the quota thing, I think, is something we should all kind of take home and think about. Fabulous. A couple questions that came in, and then we do have some summaries and key takeaways. But we have a couple of minutes here. We have leftover time on purpose. So let's take this question, and we're, of course, just reading it from the screen. A C12 member, and that is a CEO group nationally and internationally, for those folks that don't know what C12 is. A C12 member is currently working with Sandler sales training, not only developing skills, but sales strategy as well. Yet they are beginning the strategic planning process with M3 in a few weeks. Shouldn't the sales strategy, goals, and budget shouldn't the sales strategy and goals/budget be in place first, or does the budget follow the plan? Any suggestions for order or process? Okay, so I'll take one piece of that, and then Alice can take the other piece of that. So the one piece related to budget and planning, so in a perfect world, and we talk about this all the time, if you've got your rhythm of the business correct, you're, of course, doing your customer survey first to drive the strategic decision-making and drive the strategy setting. But so that's, of course, our first part of our planning process, but there's that piece. We do our strat planning, or we update our strategic plan and create our annual set of goals and priorities, and then based on that, we should be then moving into the budgeting process. Many organizations we work with, however, don't have that sequenced correctly, and so maybe the first year or 2 years, you kind of need to understand that you're not going to get the rhythm correct, and understand you can pass at that and get to it, get it when you can actually get the rhythm correct. And that takes time sometimes. So you kind of just need to understand the implications of doing budgeting before planning, because obviously we're not necessarily resourcing what our strategy is. So
right.
You can adapt to it, though, so it's not perfect. But in a perfect world, strat planning, then budgeting. And Alice, your point on where sales strategy fits into that?
I would just say be prepared to be flexible. I mean, in a perfect world, yes, I'd like to see that strategic plan done first and the budgeting process done first, because I don't even know if sales training fits into your budget right now, but you're fitting it in because you've got it going. So that's fine, but I think that be prepared to be flexible and be prepared to make changes. But what happens usually if it's done in this manner is, well, my gosh, we've done all this sales training and sales strategy, and it doesn't fit into our strategic plan, so now what should we do? Be flexible. Change either the strategy and the training, or change the plan, but do what's best for your company, not based on that, well, we already spent all this money, so we have to do it this way now, because that's the danger that happens. And there are so many good training programs out there, Sandler being one of them, absolutely. But we really, again, cannot plan our sales in a vacuum. We really have to think about, what do we want this company to be this year, next year, 5 years? How can we plan sales without knowing that? How can we plan sales without knowing how many new products we're going to develop, or what direction the company's take, or we're going to exit by selling the company to somebody else? We have to know these kinds of things first, and that makes it easier to decide what kind of sales training we need, what kind of sales strategy we need. So you started one before the other, oh well. Be prepared to be flexible.
Right, that's perfect. Alice, let's take one last question, and we'll answer it fairly quickly, although it's a big question. And maybe you want to just point us to some resources, but how do you qualify a lead?
Wow. Yeah, that's a big question. I guess what I'll do is write you a blog post on that for my next blog post. How do you qualify a lead? I think it's going to be a 5-parter. Actually, it's simple and it's complicated, right? Qualifying a lead is basically asking questions and getting the answers to them. So, how do I qualify a lead? I need to know who's making the decision. So there's a question. Can you tell me who besides yourself will be involved in making the decision for this sale? What's your timeline for implementation? What's your timeline for making the final decision? What other solutions have you considered? What's your budget? So there's a set of questions that help you qualify a lead. That's the easy part. I can give you the list of questions, and you have to have someone to go ask them to, and that's the hard part. So I might be talking to you, Erica, but you're not the decision maker, so I could ask you all those questions, and I still don't necessarily know. I mean, you may give me some answers, but I don't necessarily know if they're the right answers. So qualifying a lead has several parts to it. One, and first and foremost, the salespeople need to know what questions to ask, and they need not to be afraid to ask them, and they need to ask them right up front so they don't waste anyone's time. But they also have to be talking to the right person. And building the relationships to get to the right people is the harder part of qualifying a lead.
So Alice just kind of indicated she has a blog. You would expect nothing less. So a suggestion, of course, would be check out her blog, AliceHeiman.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can go to AliceHeiman.com, and my blog has a tab there, but it's also smartsalestips.com.
Perfect.
So that's easy to read. You can find me on Facebook, and my blog will post up to my Facebook page as well.
Okay. So obviously tons of learnings from Alice, and there are a lot of quite a few other questions I think that her resources will answer. As Ryan indicated earlier, she also has YouTube or training video snippets, correct, that are
absolutely on YouTube or on my website, different places,
that answer some of those hard sales questions. So as you can tell, Alice does sales all day, every day, and has for years.
There are tons of free articles on my website. Just go to my main page and scroll down, and you'll see a place for articles, and there's a lot of stuff for sales managers that I think you'll find really helpful.
And as you can see, we love working with Alice, and that's why we had her here today as well, because of her practical approach, down-to-earth approach about what it really takes to increase sales, ultimately, and what we can do regardless of the size of the organization, and also regardless of our perhaps our competency in understanding the intricacies of sales. So that's great. We have some key takeaways that Alice is going to wrap us up with, and then we'll talk about the next huddle. Alice, what are some things we should remember from our conversation today?
Well, I think probably the key thing is that increasing sales requires a plan. Now, I know a lot of companies who have increased sales without a plan. So, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but consistent growth and growth in the right direction that's really going to lead your business where you want it to be in the end, that does take a plan. It takes flexibility, innovation, and, I just can't say enough about having that all fit into your bigger strategic plan. I think it's really important. I think another thing is that you've got to set the goals and be specific about what needs to be done to reach those goals. It's tough when senior executives just throw out these broad goals and everybody else has to go figure it out. You've got to be very specific, and sales managers need to be very specific with their salespeople. Don't assume your salespeople know how to grow their own territory. Even the most seasoned salespeople need help with that, especially because sales has changed so much. Good sales skills and basics still apply, but the world is really different now. So the consumer is much more educated. The internet plays a huge role. There's so many things that have changed. So don't just assume your salespeople, even though they've been doing it forever, don't need any help. They do need your help. Know your target audience, right? That's how you're going to easily generate qualified leads. Really take some time thinking about who your target audience is. Look at who your ideal customers are right now and learn from them, learn about them, and target based on that. And then consider the length of your sales cycle when you're setting the goals and whenever you're reassessing. For different reasons in this economy, the sales cycle, the length can change. With different buyers, it can change for different reasons. So really take that into consideration and talk about sales cycle. Talk about it with the buyers too, so they can understand. And then don't forget to determine what kind of personnel you really need. A lot of times we're just expecting people. I know budgets are tight, everything, at companies is slimmed down, but we're expecting people to do ridiculous things, work too much. You're burning people out. Really consider those personnel needs and what training they need as well, so that you can reach your goals.
Great points, great takeaways. I know those are all things we can put into action in our organizations. I'm going to bring us and wrap us up now with our closing thoughts about the next huddle, and then we'll officially end this session. A couple key points. If you entered a question that we didn't answer, we will absolutely respond to it via email. So just kind of know that. We just ran out of time for all the questions. Great questions today. Thanks so much to everyone. Just much appreciate Alice being here. She has so much to share and such energy, so we really, really appreciate it. You can see that the next huddle is on July 27th, same time, same place. We want to know what you want to talk about, so if you know where to send your questions into us at either admin@mystrategicplan.com or Facebook or Twitter, of course. We would love to host you. If you have something to share and you'd like to be a strategy leader, let us know. We'd be happy to have you present. We, of course, the great trainings on great training and resources on mystrategicplan.com. Great stuff on Alice's website as well. So now you have another set of resources, which is just fabulous. And as Ryan mentioned earlier today, we are, of course, we'll be sending out these slides to you, as well as the follow-up information where you can get resources information from Alice as well. So you'll be getting that email along with a post survey. So take the survey. We want to know what you think. Wrap-up items from us. You can see our contact information there. Ryan just had up on the screen as well. We know a lot of folks are looking for additional help and resources around strategy planning and sales assistance. So those were the additional services that we're offering to help people complete their strategic plan and also complete their sales strategy as well. So thanks so much to everyone. We really appreciate your time. Alice, thank you.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great rest of the week, everyone. Take care.